there, campers, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Camp Cryptid. I'm your host, Erica Fett, and today I am so excited to bring some cryptid goodness to you. And this is Camp Cryptid, right? And I love storytelling. And so anytime I get to do a little episode dedicated to a creepy little cryptid, I am so pumped. And I'm so excited for the episode today. My patrons voted a couple months back after my werewolf episode about some cryptid love that they'd love to see in future episodes. And my patrons chose a couple different topics, but the one that won today's episode is going to be the Van Meter Visitor. And what I will say is this one, if you've never heard of the Van Meter Visitor, first off, don't feel bad, because this one wasn't even on my radar until about a year ago. And it's a lesser known cryptid. You know, it's not as well known as like Mothman and Bigfoot and stuff, but he's still gnarly. And I think it deserves some real love. And the Van Meter Visitor is one that after I started researching a bit, I was like, wow, this one is such a cool story. And I'm just really excited, if you've never heard of the Van Meter Visitor, to, expose you to this crazy world of this cool cryptid. So let's get into it. So we're going to go back in time to the year of 1903 in the United States. You know, we've got Teddy Roosevelt was the president. You've got the first successful flight took place in North Carolina, thankfully to the Wright brothers. And, it was stuff like cocaine was taken out of Coca-Cola as an official ingredient. And, the first box of crayons by Crayola hit the market with a, price tag of a whopping 5 cents. So it was a really cool time in the United States, right? And then you've got exploration and paleontology, which was really booming around the entire world, actually. And you've got species and animals like the eastern gorilla that were scientifically proven to exist. So you've got a lot of cool new discoveries, and you've got this like age of people being excited about these new discoveries and science and what could really exist out there, right? So 1903 was truly popping off, right? And you've also got this strange little event in this tiny little town in Iowa called Van Meter that happened that literally left this town of 400 people completely in shock and disbelief as to what creature they could have just encountered. So what exactly happened in Van Meter, Iowa in 1903 with the Van Meter Visitor, right? So the town of Van Meter, Iowa was a pretty normal small town until one day in the fall, when a creature appeared over the course of many nights to many of the people in town. So this creature didn't just appear to multiple people. When it appeared, it actually gave people a very uneasy feeling because it looked almost like a prehistoric looking creature, something that people had never seen before. Witnesses described this creature looking like some sort of human, bird, bat-like creature, because they said it appeared to be human-like, but it had giant wings that were almost like a bat's wings. Now, people also said this creature stood about 8 feet tall, so it was really, really big. And the people in town also said you always knew it was around because it just smelled completely awful. Like anytime it was around, it just smelled putrid, and people instantly knew it's probably around somewhere because the smell was not good. But the strangest thing about this creature, this 8-foot giant human bat-like creature, was that people said that when it perched, it actually had a beam of light that shot out from a horn that was in the middle of its head. So a pterodactyl with laser beams, right? And, aside from it being like a pterodactyl with laser beams on its head, right? People say it hopped like a kangaroo. And some stories, they even say that after it left the area, it left footprints that were 15 inches with 3 little claw-like toes on each foot. And people say that there's a cast of this exact foot. And I do believe that it's in a museum around Van Meter, and I've seen pictures of it, so I'll have to take those pictures and upload them to the subreddit for Camp Cryptid, because it is interesting. It's like what you would imagine a dinosaur footprint to look like, right? Which doesn't surprise me when it comes to the looks of this thing. Now, this creature was shot at by multiple people in the town on multiple occasions, but the creature wasn't really fazed at all by the commotion of the bullets, and it didn't seem to be affected by the bullets either. And And I will say that even though this creature appeared on multiple occasions, there was one day where a lot of townspeople decided, this is it. We're done seeing this creature. It's creepy. It's scaring us. It's terrorizing us. It's just scary to look at, and it smells awful. So let's get it out of here. So they followed this creature to one of the abandoned coal mines that was outside of town. And as they, followed this creature to try to chase it off, they noticed that there was another creature waiting for it in this coal mine. So there were two creatures outside of Van Meter. And as they shot at these creatures, nothing really seemed to hit the creatures. The creatures didn't seem to be affected or be hurt by the bullets. But the creatures decided to, retreat into the darkness of the mine, never to be seen again by anybody in Van Meter. So the Van Meter visitor is still a mystery today. We don't know really what it was. We have tons of eyewitness testimonies. We have tons of theories as to what it could have been, but nothing really saying exactly what this sighting was. And, you have to admit, if you see an 8-foot human bat-like creature, right, and it's emitting some sort of light beam out of a horn on its head, you're going to be like, what? Even in today, in 2025, with everything we know, imagine being in 1903 and then seeing this. You would probably think that it was like the end of the days, right? But still to this day, we don't know what it is. We only have ideas. We only have, some crazy explanations, some rational explanations. We just really don't know. So, has there been similar sightings, though, to things like this? Yeah, absolutely. This isn't the first time that some unknown winged creature was seen by someone. And especially earlier in the country's history, there were tons of stories about prehistoric-looking creatures that were seen around the deserts, that were seen all over the country. I mean, think about the tombstone winged serpent that happened in 1890, where it was almost like a giant alligator with wings, where ranchers saw this thing, they shot it out of the sky, and they said it was like 90 feet long, right? So you have all of these weird stories of all of these creatures that could have existed. And, so this isn't the first time that something like this has happened. And, more recently in the country's history, you have stories like the Mothman, you have the Jersey Devil, you have the Houston Batman, the Chicago Mothman, you have the Thunderbird. So they all center around some kind of creature that's like a winged human-like creature that we just don't know what exactly it is, right? And, all around the world, there are stories and legends of some creature lurking in the sky. From dragons to dinosaurs, these legends remain shrouded in mystery and speculation still to this day. So the Van Meter visitor is definitely one that is very interesting, and I think it deserves a lot more love than what it gets. We always, prop up Bigfoot, and, Bigfoot is sick. Don't get me wrong, and I love me some Mothman. But there are so many lesser-known cryptids where it's just like, I love to, spark people's curiosity. And, the world is such a wonderful, mysterious place. And, it's wondering whether or not humans encroached on a lot of these creatures' habitats. And maybe, that's what we were seeing around these times with more, humans moving and expanding where they're living and populations rising. Humans encroaching on, these habitats is not something that's far out of, the grasp of reality. But this one's pretty wild, right? If you think about it, a giant 8-foot bat-like creature. What could it have been? It's pretty wild. And I will say, before I get into my, what the explanations could be of this thing, it's such a human thing to be like, I don't know. What is that thing? Let's shoot at it. Let's kill it. I didn't see anything that really said that this creature was really trying to eat anyone or hurt anyone. People just decide to shoot at it. I don't know. I am a big fan of saving animals, and it's our duty as humans to make sure that they're safe and protected. So let's not go and try to hunt Mothman or shoot Bigfoot. Let's just let them, let's let them live. Let's protect them. Let them live. It's our duty as humans. Okay. So if you see the Van Meter visitor, don't shoot at it. I mean, if it goes to try to eat you, of course, maybe you can defend yourself. But if it's just chilling, flying, let it fly. Let it be free. Now, but when it comes to an explanation of what the Van Meter visitor is, I don't know. This was a time when science and scientific discoveries were making headlines and had the world waiting for the newest discovery. And tales of expeditions and mysterious animals like the gorilla were on the front pages of newspapers. So people around the time knew that there were undiscovered animals. And, a lot of people around the time were excited about these discoveries. And as far as Iowa goes, geographically, it's, when you have all of these mines, these abandoned coal mines, right? And people were, getting resources out of these mines, there are a ton of cave systems. And what I will say is Iowa is full of prehistoric aged caves. So they also believe that there are a ton of caves that exist in Iowa that have not been discovered yet. So Iowa does sit on top of some very old cave systems. So I don't know. So who's really to say what could or couldn't exist within those systems? Now, rational explanations of what the Van Meter visitor sighting could have been, right? You've got misidentification of another animal. A lot of people said, oh, what they were just seeing was, a hornbill bird. And I'm no bird expert. I do love, bird watching. I do absolutely love bird watching. But they don't seem to get about 8 feet. Unless this was an anomaly, right? You could have had like the most giant hornbill in the world just land in Van Meter, Iowa. Sure, why not? There are also other types of flying things that could have matched this description, like the flying dragon. It's a species of lizard that can fly, or glide more so. But these only get to be like a foot long, and that's including the tail. But like I said, it could have been some kind of crazy freak anomaly where it was the largest one ever, and it just happened to be in Van Meter, Iowa. You never know. There's other giant birds in the world, right? There's condors, there's ostriches, in the moa of New Zealand, the giant bones that were found in Madagascar of these giant 14-foot tall birds, right? So we do know that there are giant birds that have existed prior to present day, right? So that's one explanation, is that this Van Meter visitor is just a misidentification of some freak bird that was just flying around Iowa, right? There's also the idea that it was mass hysteria. That, a lot of articles were being published around the time. Like I said earlier, this was a time in human existence where people were discovering new species of animals. We had dinosaur fossils being found. We had tons of new things. Like I think the vampire squid might have been found in 1903. So you have all of these weird things and these crazy creatures that people didn't think, that were once cryptids, but now they've been proven to scientifically exist. So you've got this time where people's, imaginations are running with curiosity and, what could exist out there. So this could have been, one of those instances where it was mass hysteria. It could have been like a giant, hornbill, right? And people, exaggerate the size. It could have been, a 2-foot tall hornbill that was a freak of nature, but, people turn it into an 8-foot tall bat-winged, type of thing. And the thing is even if it wasn't a bird that was native to the area, it would have thrown people off, right? Because it wasn't necessarily a bird that people had seen before. So that is okay. I'll give that some credence, right? Could it have been another cryptid? I talked earlier about like other cryptids that were flying creatures that could have been seen. There's the stories of the thunderbird. There's the giant bat cryptid in Africa, the Popobawa. And that is like a giant winged bat creature that people had sightings of. So to me, that sounds like the most like the Van Meter visitor. When it comes to cryptids, like I said, there's just so many winged cryptid creatures out there around the world. So it's not like this is a one and done type of thing. There's been a lot of winged creatures that we just don't know what they are. Could it have been an unknown prehistoric creature living in the mines? I talked earlier about how they said, Iowa has tons and tons and tons of prehistoric caves, right? So we know that the area is old. We know that things could exist in those mines, and we don't really know. If we don't know the creature, we don't really know anything about how and what kind of conditions it can survive in. So there's that too. And though my favorite explanation was it the movie Pitch Black? Because literally when I first read about the Van Meter Visitor, I was like, oh, has to be what Pitch Black is based on, because I love that movie. One, I'm such a nerd. I watched that movie like a million times. But it's what it reminds me of, right? Is the movie Pitch Black. And if you haven't seen it, if you like the Van Meter Visitor episode and you're like, wow, this is a cool cryptid, and you have not seen Pitch Black, go watch it. Go do yourself a favor, treat yourself, and watch Pitch Black. And then there's the idea that this was some kind of extraterrestrial being, right? What I love is when theories like this come about, it's like, okay, you've got these creatures, right? And they doesn't seem to be intelligent life. So how the hell are they like getting here and using intelligence to fly from one system to another? And I don't know. You would think that if it was like some kind of intelligent creature who has like mastered space travel, that they would at least be able to, I don't know, like speak telepathically or something to us, right? But if it doesn't seem like it's just like a very intelligent creature, like I doubt it's extraterrestrial. Maybe it came and evolved from like a meteorite, right? I guess I don't know the answers, right? But I guess that is a fun little avenue to explore is, was it something extraterrestrial, right? Because I guess weirder things have happened. One of the darker avenues of people that think the Van Meter Visitor was something is the idea that it's a demon, right? There's that avenue that it could have been a demon from hell, right? And then the other idea is that this is all just a hoax. And what I will say, the only thing I have a problem with when it comes down to it being a hoax is that there are multiple people in the town that saw this thing. It was shot at on multiple occasions, and for some person to pull off a hoax where it involves firearms of 1903 without getting hurt, that seems a little risky, right? It seems a little wild. So I don't really think it was a hoax. I will say, like, I could be wrong, but I really just don't feel like this is something, I don't know, it seems unlikely. So that's the only thing I will say. To me, it's more likely that this was like a prehistoric creature than a hoax. So I don't know. But that's a good thing about these episodes, right? Is I just give you a basis, like general idea of what this cryptid is. And you know what? You can believe whatever you want. And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of cryptids, right? And I will say that Iowa is full of amazing lore and other cryptids. They've got the Iowa dragon, and that's the one that immediately pops into my mind. And Iowa also has lake monsters like the Obajoki, there's wildmen, there's golems, there's dogman sightings. So Iowa is full of a lot of beautiful lore and mysterious lore and cryptids. So that's really, really cool. With that being said, Iowa has a ton of fun cryptid stories, and the Van Meter Visitor is one that's still going to, I believe, continue to baffle and mystify us even into the future. So here's to the Van Meter Visitor, you gnarly pterodactyl with laser beams. I am obsessed, and I think it's so cool. And like I said, this one wasn't even on my radar at all. I had no idea that this cryptid actually even existed. And then once I read the story, I was like, what was that? And I hope that after you listen to this episode, you're kind of baffled and mystified too. But maybe someone listening is an expert on pterodactyls with laser beams. So if you are, let us know what you think, because I think this one's just really cool. And I always say this in the episodes where I talk about cryptids and folklore and urban legends, is that I just really love when areas embrace their heritage and their legends and their folklore and the stories that happened in their history. And I will say that Van Meter actually does just that. They have a little festival to commemorate the sightings that happened with the Van Meter Visitor. And like I said, there is that cast of the footprint that they did a mold of. And I believe that's there's like a little museum there. So I'll make sure to post those pictures in Reddit. But I really just think this is a cool story, and it happened to this little tiny small town, and I think it's really cool when these small towns have like really big lore, and I think it's awesome. So shout out to Van Meter, Iowa, like really cool. I hope one day I get to go there and check out the abandoned mine, which I think that they said is covered now, but I think I read something where the current owner of the area, he said he always gets weird vibes when he's there. So maybe one day I'll be blessed and be able to go to Van Meter, Iowa and check it out and go see the cast for myself and talk to people and see what people think. And I think it's just really cool. So shout out. Now, I will say, when I was coming up with ideas for movies, right, to watch, because usually at the end of every cryptid episode, I try to be like, okay, these movies are related to this cryptid, so watch it. I could only come up with a few movies, and the one being Pitch Black. Because immediately when you see the pictures of the Van Meter visitor that people have, you'll be like, that's the thing in Pitch Black, like 100%. So I will say that if you're listening to this episode and you kind of want something to kind of jump on the goodness, go watch Pitch Black. Even if you've seen it a million times, go watch it again. It's so good. And then there's another one that I think is kind of related, and it's called Loop Track. And I will say it has to do with giant cryptid birds, and it's really cool. And I don't want to give it away, but to me, when I think about cryptids, I think that was one that I really enjoyed. Yeah, those two are the ones that I would recommend for this episode. And with that being said, if you have any suggestions on movies or any type of media that has to do with the Van Meter visitor or any pterodactyls with laser beams, please let me know in the comments. I always am looking for new things to watch and, stay up to date on my cryptid goodness. So I really enjoyed it. But yeah, Van Meter visitor, the giant 8-foot pterodactyl bat-like laser beam shooting cryptid. Very cool. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the story of the Van Meter visitor. Like I said, I don't do like long ass episodes where I talk about every single thing, but I just want to give you a basis idea of it. So if you really, really like it, you can go and, there's a book that I posted on the Camp Cryptid Instagram that I would recommend. If you really like the story, it's a little book. You can get it on Amazon or pretty much any bookstore you go to. But that has like the lore, the witness testimonies, some of the drawings, just the overall climate of what Van Meter, Iowa was like around that time in 1903 and what people were, saying that they were seeing. And I think that that's a really cool one. And like I said, if you're ever around Van Meter, Iowa, go to the Van Meter Festival. I think it's so cool that they do a little festival in commemoration of this gnarly little creature. So very cool. Very cool. So when it comes to what I've been watching, on Shudder, I have been watching Hell Motel. And if you were a fan of the slasher TV show, they are doing a new show called Hell Motel. And I really, really am invested in that. I really love the special effects. That I think it's so fun. But Hell Motel has been a lot of fun to watch. I really, really enjoy that. Movie wise, I've been really boring. I went and watched 28 Years Later a couple weeks back when it first came out, and I really enjoyed it. I will say, I've been waiting for more people to watch it because, obviously spoilers, but the ending was so completely out there, and I am excited to see what they do with the second installation of this trio of movies. And I think it's going to be really dark, the next one. So very, very cool though. I always love zombie movies. Speaking of zombie movies, I was like, wait. And I did just celebrate the 40th anniversary of Return of the Living Dead. And if you haven't checked out my videos on that, I do have another video on YouTube where I'm opening some of the merch from the Return of the Living Dead movie. It was so fun to be able to celebrate that with them because y'all know I love me some zombies. I absolutely am obsessed with zombies. I've been obsessed since I was a kid. It's one of my favorite, horror movie like creeps is a zombie. So and they're depicted in so many ways. Like, how can you not love them? But yeah, so that's me. I'm pretty boring lately, but I'm very excited because I have a lot of cool episodes planned for the rest of the month. I think I was sitting there one day and I was like, oh my gosh, what would be a really cool episode is doing one on cursed objects. So I'm going to be doing one on cursed objects very soon because I think that that's a very, very cool topic and I'm very excited to talk about that. But yeah. I will say that, like I said at the beginning of the episode, my patrons did vote on topics and themes that they'd like to see. And one I'm very excited to do is one on Latin American cryptids. I have talked about cryptids of Mexico because I love Mexico. I've been to Mexico tons and I love Mexico, but I'm really excited to do one on Latin American cryptids. And I think it's so fun to talk about cryptids of different areas of the world because it just shows you like we all have creepy shit going on. So very excited to talk about that one. But yeah, other than that, I want to thank my patrons so much for hanging out with me every month and helping me decide what topics you'd like to see and just being wonderful, cool little ghouls and goblins. You guys are the best. And I also want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you so, so much for just hanging out with me for another episode and letting me talk about this weird shit with you all. It's like my favorite thing ever. And to be able to take time out of my day to watch movies about cryptids, to read about cryptids, and to just learn is just like my favorite thing. I love it. So thank you. Thank you for blessing me. And if you like what you're hearing or you don't like what you're hearing, make sure to go leave me a review on Spotify or Apple. I like the feedback. And, at the end of the day, I'm still learning, I'm evolving, and, podcasting, I don't want to say I'm like a professional at it because in no means am I a professional, but I really enjoy it. So any way that I can improve or stuff that you're loving hearing, just let me know. It makes me a better person, right? So other than that, I want to say I hope you are having a beautiful summer so far. I hope you are enjoying some good food. And if you're going to be, I know it's a little ahead of time actually, but I will be at Squonkapalooza in Pennsylvania on August 2nd. So if you're around the area and you want to celebrate Squonk, which I will be having an episode coming soon, so don't worry. But I will be in the area on August 2nd and I'll have a little booth. So make sure you stop by and say hi and grab some free stickers and all that goodness. So I just want to thank you all so much for hanging out for another episode. And until next time, take care.